Welcome to my channel, Cold Mind. Like, share and subscribe. Bogdan Arnold, Lord of the Flies. Bogdan Arnold, Lord of the Flies. The man invited prostitutes to his apartment in Katowice and murdered them with cold blood. He was born in 1933 in Kalisz, Poland. Within a year, since 1966, he has murdered 4 women. He confessed to torturing his victims. He hid their bodies in his apartment and was therefore detained by the police. The bodies at various stages of decay have attracted flocks of flies and insects, which usually appear in places where rotten meat is found. Disturbed by the swarm of huge flies, the neighbors alerted the services because they were worried that Bogdan Arnold had died. He was executed in 1968. He met his victims in bars. His father will testify later that his son was reluctant to study and showed sadistic tendencies from an early age. Nevertheless, he made relationships with women with ease, as evidenced by the fact that in just 10 years, he was married 3 times. Lord of the Flies. Bogdan Arnold, terrified by the vision of punishment, hid for a week in Silesia, tried to kill himself, but eventually reported himself to the police. When he confessed to his crimes, instead of showing remorse, he stated that he regretted not having killed his ex-wife. In March 1968, the court sentenced him to death, and the sentence was carried out in December of the same year. The first time, on October 12, 1966, Arnold was furious when a prostitute announced that she was expecting money from him. He refused to pay, and because of that she wanted to accuse him of rape. Arnold killed her. He grabbed the masonry hammer lying on the stove and hit her in the head 2 or 3 times. After many attempts to remove the body, he decided to put it in the bathtub at his home and add chloride to slow down the decomposition. The second victim died a few months later when she discovered the body of her predecessor. A few months later, Bogdan Arnold, sitting in the Maze bar, started a conversation with a 40-year-old woman, whom he later decided to take to his apartment. The man abused and raped her repeatedly, until suddenly he heard footsteps on the stairs. It was then that he decided to strangle her so that she would not alert the neighbors. After the murder, he took off his clothes to avoid blood stains, and then dismembered the body using a knife and saw and placed it in the bathtub where the body of Maria B. was already located. On April 21, 1967, a drunk Stefania M. accosted him near the bar Hungary with the words, "Shall we go, love?" The man agreed to her offer and they went together to his apartment in the attic. After being bound, the woman was hit with a thick rod, electrocuted and repeatedly raped. Hours later, the man strangled her with an electric cable. As with the rest of the victims, he cut off her head and placed it in the linen washing kettle. Even though the odor coming from the apartment was becoming unbearable, Bogdan Arnold was still there with the decaying bodies of his 3 victims. Ultimately, exactly 1 month after the murder of Stefania M., on May 22, 1967, the man committed the 4th and last murder of a prostitute. Helga S. was standing near the train station when the man accosted her in the street and invited her in to stay warm. The man wrapped the stocking around Helga's neck and then strangled the woman by holding one end of the stocking with his leg and pulling the other with his hands. In the end, he dumped the body by the window, probably because there was no room left in the tub. After the murder of Helga S., Lord of the Flies knew that his crimes would soon come to light. The neighbors had been complaining for a long time about the strange odor coming from the attic apartment, as well as numerous vermin that got through the sewage system to the neighbor's apartment from the floor below. Meanwhile, Arnold explained as much as he could that it was due to the lack of a toilet. While in apartment number 9, the bodies of 4 murdered women were decomposing. The strong smell forced murderer to leave the apartment. Meanwhile, an officer called by the neighbors determined that there was an intense smell from under the door and that the person registered at this address was Bogdan Arnold, a 34-year-old electrician. Eventually, police officers entered the apartment and discovered massacred and dismembered bodies. He knew he was wanted because one day, when returning from work to his apartment, he noticed a crowd of people in front of the tenement house. When he noticed that his apartment window was open, he realized that he had been exposed. The perpetrator was hiding mainly in coal heaps in Katowice and the surrounding area. Ultimately, his arrest was made thanks to the inhabitants of Katowice. They recognized the suspect when he appeared in the vicinity of the Silesia Steelworks. June 14, 1967, at about 11:55, Bogdan Arnold was detained. During the first interrogation, Bogdan Arnold confessed to the alleged acts. He was happy to talk about his relationship with the victims as well as women in general. In his explanations, he blamed his wives for his actions. His behavior, the brutal nature of the crimes committed, his sadistic tendencies and the fact that he lived for many months under one roof with the decomposing corpses were the basis for submitting the accused to psychiatric examination. On January 9, 1968, by the judgment of the provincial court, Lord of the Flies was sentenced 3 times to the death penalty and once to life imprisonment for the first murder. Later, the Supreme Court changed the sentence to a 4 times death penalty. The sentence was carried out on December 16, 1968, at 6:40 p.m. The last wish of Bogdan was to smoke a cigarette. But, to be honest, I would not let him do even that. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe. Please also hit the bell button so you won't miss any new content, and if you can afford it, support my channel. PayPal link in description.